Okay, the Ordun is also known as the Order, and it is believed to be the best way for the church to maintain unity and social balance. It is the common guidelines for an Amish life. So all the Amish follow the Ordun provides a blueprint for expected and forbidden behaviors. So of what they can and cannot do. So if they communicate with a person who is shunned, that is forbidden. And it gives guidance on moral issues that are not addressed directly by the scripture, as well as practical applications of biblical principles. So like dress, their clothing, how it's plain and simple, their buggies, technology, how they're not supposed to have any technology, home decor, sports, and similar matters. And the Ordun is known as the oral tradition, which means that the parents talk about it with their children. It just keeps getting passed down from generation to generation. It is clearly understood by all baptized members, and unbaptized are not accountable to their actions. So if they slightly break the rules, they don't have to be punished as much as baptized people. And marriage occurs after baptism, and they have to hold greater responsibilities for the Ordun. And members who intentionally stray from the guidelines will receive multiple warnings before they face excommunication, which means that they do not talk or speak to the Amish person who forbidden the rules. A change in rules requires a members' meeting. Each person is asked to give an anonymous recommendation of the ordained functionaries. So by this, they determine if the change of rules is necessary for the community and if it's following the Ordun, not breaking any rules. And rules are not strictly all the same in all the communities. Some affiliations are different than others. And the Ordun states that no education beyond the 8th grade. A violation of the Ordun is like owning a computer or wearing fashionable clothing or driving a car. They have a council meeting Sunday, which is 2 weeks before communion. It is time when individuals recommit themselves to upholding the church's guidelines. There's 2 layers of the Ordun. It's implicit, which is below the surface layers, holds the wisdom of accumulated tradition. And some examples are like not wearing jewelry, men growing beards and shaving their upper lip, traveling by horse and carriage or buggy, meeting in homes for worship, and singing without instruments. Explicit is discussed in conversations, members' meetings, and council meetings. It addresses emergent issues, which uses the use of cell phones and computers, challenges to long-standing taboos, leisure activities, and other concerns. And like I said before, the Ordun is known as the oral tradition, which the Amish youth is absorbed the Ordun by listening and speaking from their ancestors. So it's like the grammar of Amish life is expected what to do and where and behave. And pictured below is the Amish children listening and learning the Ordun from their family. And then picture below that is the Amish family living by the Ordun and riding their horse and buggy. Their clothing is very recognizable in today's society, but back in the 1700s, it was not very prominent. And the Amish, instead of discarding their clothes that they have holes in, they patch them up. So like the non-Amish, if they get a hole in their sock, they just throw it away right away. And some common colors for the Amish clothing is purple, blue, maroon, green, brown, gray, black, white, which is like considered more of the darker colors. And they have solid color fabric and no patterns within their culture. It is important clue to one's status and compliance. It reflects the biblical values of humility, modesty, self-denial, simplicity, and separation from the world. Social tasks is signals that a member has yielded to the collective order. It prevents dress from being used for self-adornment, equality, group identity, and they consider to act Amish. So the Amish are not allowed to like stick out compared to one another. They all have to wear their plain clothing and be equal. All cosmetics and jewelry are taboo, like their engagement rings and wedding rings, and body rings and tattoos and wristwatches are forbidden. However, some may wear a copper ring, but not as jewelry. They wear it as to help treat the arthritis for pain. The style and color of dresses signifies social distinction, gender, age, marriage status, church membership, social esteem, religious rituals. So between each affiliation within the Amish community, they may have a different dress code compared to a different Amish affiliation. And pictured is different colored Amish dresses. The men, once they are ordained, they grow their beard fuller and longer and wear a wide-brimmed hat. And the style and size of hat, the color of trousers, width of suspenders, cut of their hair reveals affiliation of traditionalism. So it differs between each affiliation. Their shirts are usually a pullover or button down. They wear suspenders, and depending on the affiliation, they have dark colored sneakers, black leather shoes, shoes that have a distinct heel. And pictured below is a couple of Amish men with their shirts, their suspenders, and their hats. As you can see, some of the men have a more fuller beard than the others. And women, once they are ordained, they wear more conservative shoes, a large head covering with wider strings, more plain cut dress. And their head covering is called cap. When they work around the farm, they typically wear a gray apron, and sometimes some affiliations they just go barefoot around the farm and house. And below is pictured of women dressed in their plain dresses, vests, aprons, and head coverings. For children, as they get older, dresses clearly marks gender, because when they're baby boys, they wear dresses and only can be distinguished from girls by their lack of head covering. However, when they go outdoors, you can't tell the difference because they both wear bonnets. Once the boy is potty trained, the boy is allowed to wear pants, and then their dress mirrors their father's. Girls' dress marks 2 stages. They wear pinafore, it's a style of apron that button in the back over long-waisted dresses that also button in the back. Puberty, they adopt adult-style front-shut dresses and capes. And more traditional girls' dresses can signal an in-between stage. Preteen girls wear cross capes instead of the aprons they have worn since birth, and then only after completing school, beginning to dress as an adult woman. However, some other affiliations by 7th grade wear adult dresses, so depending on the affiliation, it can signify the different affiliations and the different style of dresses. Picture below is the different children wearing their long dresses, and the little boy is mirroring his father's dress code. For weddings, they are not allowed to have any veils or tuxedos. Brides typically make their own wedding dresses and bridesmaid dresses. And typically a bridesmaid's dress is a shade of blue, but some are purple. And the bride and bridesmaids wear a cape and apron over dresses. The groom and groomsmen wear black suit coats and white shirts. The grooms wear the wide-brimmed hat. Weddings are typically only held on Tuesday and Thursday in November and December. They are typically held in November or December because it is a downtime for their cropping season. And after their wedding, the brides usually wear their dress to church, and once they pass away, they are buried in their wedding dress. And for church, men wear plain white shirts, black coats, vest over top. Some wear black bow ties. Suit coat does not have any buttons or collars. And then a woman wears black cape and apron with plain colored dress underneath. And then they wear black shoes and stockings.
Okay, cell phones and telephones. The cell phones have pretty much increased since whenever they first started doing the Amish communities, and they've been slowly progressing every year. Although the telephone landlines are still banned as of 1920. This is part of the Oregon, I guess it's tradition, so it's like a traditional thing where they do not have telephones in the house. Phones in the household are still rejected today. and this is pretty much a symbol of the connection to the world, or the outside world as they call it, which can end Amish communities, is what they think. Cell phones are often used as for long-distance communications between different communities of the Amish or families. They said they use it for like Amish taxis in a way where they can call other Amish people if they need a ride if they do not have a horse and buggy. And then they also use it for conducting business, like off of the homes, and these are pretty much the only reasons why they use cell phones, but mainly it's the men that use the cell phones more than the women. Electricity. Some forms of electricity are acceptable in the Amish communities, like just the battery-powered lights, nothing like the wired lights to put on their buggies so that way they can see and no one runs into them in the middle of the night. And then some of the machinery, it's just the main tractors where they can use them without rubber, but that's for certain Amish communities or like any other kind of communities. They do not use tractors as much. They use their horses with plows or planters. However, the elements like the public power lines, TVs, computers, and modern tractors are considered temptations from the outside world, which is like the world that we live in right now. And Amish believe that these elements from the outside world can weaken the family structure, or they can also weaken the Amish communities and destroy pretty much the Amish Ordon or anything like that. So for the transportation, Amish do not use cars. They do not use, they can ride in things, but they cannot use them themselves. Amish typically use horse and buggies, but they're starting to add new things into it. Their religion allows them to ride in. They're not allowed to drive them, but they are allowed to ride in trains, buses, automobiles, anything pretty much that's another person is driving for them. And it is said to believe that the car ownership can destroy the Amish communities or Amish societies and all that. And then there are multiple different kinds of buggies, like the one in the top part is a market buggy, which they typically use around to bring like food goods and noodles and anything pretty much. The family wagon is for mainly bigger families. They do have uncovered ones too, just like it has pictured on both the bottom ones, but the family wagon is typically used for whenever they go to like Sunday church or something like that at someone else's house. And then they have the courting buggy, which is on the bottom, and that one I think is used for weddings and stuff like that, or like main occasions. And there's just so many more that I could name off, but I don't have quite a big list for that.
Moving on to languages. The Amish are trilingual, meaning they speak 3 different languages. Their main language being Pennsylvanian Dutch. It's the main language that they speak amongst each other. An exception to this is the Swiss Amish, who speak a form of Swiss German, which according to the Amish that speak Pennsylvanian Dutch, this sounds to them like Spanish would sound to us, very rapid with a lot of syllables. Pennsylvania Dutch developed in the 18th century from the immigration of German speakers from Central Europe to southeast Pennsylvania. And there were very many dialects of German, but they decided that instead of speaking all these different dialects, they assimilated to the majority that was spoken, which was Pennsylvanian German, or that's another name for Pennsylvanian Dutch. It is spoken amongst each other. Like I said, it's the main oral language spoken, and during church sermons when they're not reading out of biblical texts. Their second language is English. English is the language that they speak with the non-Amish. It's their dominant literate language. They use it for reading and writing. And English literacy, spoken words, the ability level of each person depends on their training, occupation, intelligence, and frequency of interaction with non-Amish. This could affect how well they're able to speak with non-Amish in a good or bad way. The children are taught how to read, write, and speak English in school, and English is used when teaching as well. The third language that they speak, or for the mostly read, is German. It's usually only used in religious texts like the Bible or the Ausbund, or their hymnal book. It's taught in schools so children can read these texts, and like I said before, Bible, Ausbund, or the hymnal book, the prayer book, and older religious materials are read in German. They're more sacred and spiritual than Pennsylvanian Dutch, and therefore it's seen as, when they translated it to English during the time that Martin Luther in the Protestant Reformation was happening, they decided to keep the biblical texts in German because they felt this was more sacred, more closer to God. Moving on to shunning. Shunning involves a strict and intentionally painful degree of separation from the community, including family members. They do this for two reasons. It protects the community by separating negative influences. So, say a person of interest wants to bring some sort of modern technology into the community. By shunning them, they keep the risk for other people adopting this modern influence into the community. And the second reason is it uses shame and pain of separation to draw the individual back into proper fellowship. If this person sees some modernity or doesn't like something that goes on in their community, they may want to leave the community, but using the pain of separation to draw them back, it's not necessarily manipulative, but it does provide good incentive for them to come back to the community, come back to their family, everything they grew up with. It breaks forms of social contact. So this means the Amish aren't permitted to eat at the same table as the shunned member. They can't accept gifts, rides, other services. There's a story in our book where it talked about one person was shunned and they came to their family to eat with them one day. The next time they did it, the church had talked to the family, and so they made a separate table entirely for the shunned member. And then eventually the church had told the family that they weren't allowed to have contact or eat at the same room with them at all. Aside from eating, they're not allowed to accept gifts, receive rides, or other services from them. One reason that an individual is shunned is because the person commits a sinful act as defined by the Bible and does not repent. This includes adultery, fornication, lying, stealing, etc. Basically anything that's listed as a sin in the Bible, such as one of the 10 Commandments per se. A second reason is violation of community rules. Like it was mentioned earlier, each affiliation has an ordnung, and by disobeying the ordnung, they are risking bringing these modern technologies into the community, and they are risking leaving the community as well. So for the ordnung, going against rules for technology, clothing, trade, if an Amish woman doesn't wear a bonnet a certain way, they could receive warnings before they're actually excommunicated. If they drive a car, if they do some sort of recreational activity that isn't allowed in the ordnung, this all leads to shunning. It's not necessarily because these things are sins, because they're not stated as sins in the Bible, but it's seen as sinful pride. It puts divisiveness above the collective agreements of the community. So basically, it's seen as pride. It's seen as kind of vain because they're putting their own interest, their own individuality above the community, in which community is one of the most important aspects of Amish lifestyle. And by kind of setting this aside, they're sort of undermining their community. And a second reason, it violates Amish baptismal vow. When an Amish member is baptized into the church, they make a promise to keep the community ordnung, and when they go against some of the rules, they're breaking that promise. The third reason is leaving the Amish altogether. Rules for this are a little different between communities. This is in regard to coming back to the church, to that community, or going into a different Amish community. For example, some will lift the ban and discontinue shunning an individual if that individual joins and remains faithful to a neighboring or like-minded church, but some will continue to shun. For example, in a Schwarzentruber Amish, they have a lot of strict rules, and if somebody would like to maintain the Amish lifestyle while relieving a few of these rules, they may want to leave the Schwarzentruber Amish and go to a different affiliation. In that case, the Schwarzentruber would continue to shun, but in other cases, if a person leaves one Amish affiliation, goes to another, they may lift the ban.
Some information about Amish dating. It begins around the age of 16, and they typically get married around 20 or 22. They meet by socializing at church or home visits, and they have a Sunday night singing, which takes place in a person's home or barn, and they sing across from each other at a table and socialize in between songs. And if a boy is interested in a girl, he offers to take her a ride home from Sunday singing. A typical Amish date includes taking buggy rides together or participating in outdoor activities with a group of people. And like the non-Amish, our typical dates are going out to dinner together or going to the movies or to the park. But we do have some group dates too, like the Amish. And for the manners for the Amish, they are considered not the politest people. Like when you come over and when you're about to leave, they do not see you outside the door. They do not walk you out. And there's no introductions, hugging, kissing, greeting, saying goodbye, saying please, excuse me, and thank you at the dinner table. And they didn't learn manners when they were children because the church didn't value that as a priority. Belching is not considered rude at the dinner table. It means that the food was good. And typically in a non-Amish family, belching at the table is considered rude. And there's little talk around the table during the meals. And for non-Amish, they usually typically to talk to each other about how their day went, what they're planning on doing the next day. And below is pictured a young Amish woman and man going on a date by riding the buggy horse.
For this section of additional information, I used this to more directly answer the questions that were asked for this topic. So with language, the question was, is there a specific dominant language spoken and taught in all Amish communities? And are children raised to be bilingual in order to maintain and celebrate their cultural heritage? Like I said before, they're trilingual, and the reason Pennsylvania Dutch is the primary language of the three, and it's used by the Amish, is because it fortifies Amish identity. It's used to insulate community and culture separately from the outside world. So, say you learn a second language such as Spanish, you're more comfortable with your English language, and you're able to express your feelings a lot easier, more flowing conversation, versus when you're using Spanish mostly for basic communication with other Spanish speakers. It's more difficult for the Amish to speak with non-Amish because English is more like a second language, just like if you have English as primary and Spanish as secondary. Additionally, Pennsylvania Dutch is used more easily to express emotions and religion. Like I said, they're more comfortable, more flowing language with Pennsylvania Dutch than they are with English. Another question I had was, how different are the lives of Amish men and women? Are women expected to watch over all the children while the men work, or do the men take part in childcare? Also, are the older children expected to watch their younger siblings? This was kind of a 3-in-1 question, but I kind of saw this as asking what are the gender roles when it comes to child rearing. And what I found was husbands usually provide the financial means for the family, while wives typically focus on the household and children. In the Bible, it was seen more as women hold up the home, take care of the children. This does not mean that the men do not take part in the child care as well. While they may teach their sons to help in the field or help raise the animals, the father does serve as the spiritual head of the home, and women nurture the spiritual life of the children. So if one of the children were to have a question about faith or something, they would go to the father, and the mother would additionally help to fortify their understanding of the religion. The last question I had was, are Amish children forced to remain Amish later into adulthood, or are they given the option to experience modern technologies and practices? They are given this option to experience this. It's called Rumspringa, and it's where the Amish youth go out into the world to experience modern life outside of their communities. It's the German word for running around. Like it was mentioned earlier, the rules of the Ordnung and the rules of the church do not account to those who are not baptized, and at this age, such as around 16, these Amish members are not baptized yet, so they are unable to be shunned, and they're given the chance to go out into the world, experience modern technologies. So if they do experience modern technologies, they can't get in trouble from the church since they're not members yet. The rules are relaxed, and like I just mentioned, they can't get into the trouble because they're not members of the church, and it gives the youth the chance to experience the modern world so they can make the conscious decision to join the church. The Amish believe that if someone is to join the church, join their affiliation, it shouldn't be because they're forced. They should choose it. They should understand the lifestyle, respect it, and therefore make the conscious decision to join. It is also around the age of 16, and this is where courtship and marriage is beginning. It gives youth the chance to seek someone to date and eventually marry after baptism. While they're not forced to remain Amish, there are pressures to stay with the community, such as it kind of has the same pressures as if someone was shunned. They would be leaving their family, friends, means of education, and economic opportunities behind, and they would be excommunicated and shunned if they left the community, but this would only be after they're baptized. Not to mention, it's difficult to stand on one's own 2 feet in the modern world after living in their community for so long.
Okay, so my question for my additional information was, what is the typical day of an Amish woman? Women typically stay at home, and the husbands go away to help financially help them out, and they take care of cleaning, cooking, and helping with the kids. So I found an actual schedule of what they do every day. So Sundays, this includes both men and women, they do no forms of work because that is their religious day, just as Catholics or any Christian. Mondays is the day that they wash all the clothes and then hang up the clothes as well on the line. Tuesday is ironing day. Wednesdays is the Amish market day. This is where they go out and sell all their food goods that they made the day or before or the week before, or they go out and get stuff. Thursdays is sewing and mending days if they need to sew up or patch up any of their clothing. Fridays is baking day, and then Saturdays is cleaning the house from top to bottom day. So pretty much all the older kids or any of the kids can help their moms or the other women out. Amish women are very set on a schedule of what they do each and every day, so they know pretty much what they need to do and how to do it. And then my other question was, do the Amish celebrate the same holidays as we celebrate? Amish holidays, they only celebrate public, and they also celebrate religious holidays. So some Amish do partake in American holidays such as New Year's Day, where the men get off of work for that day. They pretty much, any American holiday, they get off of work for that day and they get paid for that day. So there's New Year's Day, there's Thanksgiving, and sometimes they do 4th of July, but not very often. And then Valentine's Day is mainly where the children go around and give each other little cards that they've made, or they give their family cards that they've made. They do not celebrate Halloween, so they do not do any carving or anything like that. And then for their religious holidays, they celebrate the Easter, like Easter Sunday, Good Friday, and they pretty much do like Lent, like Catholics do, and then they celebrate Christmas and Pentecost.